MC-101 has a bit of a reputation for being menu divey, kind of clunky, and unintuitive. And fair enough, when I first got into it, I thought the same. But eventually I was able to get over that learning curve, and now it's one of my favorites, as I've talked about quite a few times on this channel. And it's a device I really like to use casually, in like a travel situation or sitting on the couch. And so I've picked up a bunch of little workflow techniques that make it much quicker and easier to use, which I would like to show to you today. So I'm going to split this video up into two parts. Part one, I'm just going to remake a beat that I've made as quickly as possible, no commentary, just go, go, go. Part two, I will basically do that again and walk you through all of the various steps and things that you can do to make your experience on the MC-101 as pleasant as possible, as well as a cheat sheet of various shortcuts in the description. All that being said, my time starts now. All right, just to put all my cards on the table here, I do have written down a few notes about like tempo, presets, all that kind of stuff, and I already know what I'm going to play. This is just to demonstrate the kind of quickness that the workflow can get to if you have a little bit of patience up front. So let's get into it. I am going to not commentate, or at least not much. And we are off. And right off rip, just get something basic in here. And then swap these out. Let's go to this pack. Where are you? Cool. Get a kick up in here. I know how letters work. Okay. Now, real quickly, let's just do some basic velocity tweakage as efficiently as you can be for something that's a bit fiddly. Cool. So I want this on the second one. Okay, let's keep that momentum going. Get a preset. Oh, all right, we're leaving that in. I goofed. And I messed that up too. Once again, we're leaving that in. Apologies. Okay, let me just quickly check something. Okay, we good. Moving on. I require bass, brother. No, go away. I am very dumb. There we go.
Not perfect, but we'll come back to that in a second. I need to go back up. Okay. And then I would go in and fix up that bass, start adding some other parts, that kind of stuff. But this marks the first edit we have made. We're about 5 minutes into filming. Not bad, I think. Now, let's do that a bit more slowly with a bunch more commentary. Let's go ahead and hit project, start a new one. This is not meant to be a full tutorial, by the way. I've done one of those already, but think of this as kind of an updated tutorial now that I've gotten very, very comfortable with this thing to the point of using it pretty casually, including like sitting on the couch, that kind of thing. So to swap out a drum, you go shift and then select the pad. And I'm going to scroll to wave file. There is one weird little bit of jank, like an inconsistency that I'm going to show you in a second. But first of all, I'm going to navigate to the sound pack that I want. So when you're browsing for wave files, you hit the sound button to audition that sound, which I didn't know for a while because it's not all that obvious. And here's the first workflow kind of smoothing. Once you've done this shift pad and you load in a sound, you don't have to bail out of this. I can just go right to the next sound and load in, I think it was hi-hat 7 that I want. Yep. Nope, that's not what I want. I can just load a different one in. That makes loading in a bunch of sounds all at once relatively quick. So here's the inconsistency. Remember I said that if you hit the sound button, it'll audition a sound for wave files. That is not the case with presets. In presets, you actually just hit the pad that you want to load the sound into. I don't know why it's different. That seems silly to me, but here we are. So now, there's nothing playing. Let me set my tempo. I'm doing this a little bit out of order here. This is just the kind of ordinary menu divey scrolliness that you might be used to from the 101. Also note that as of firmware update, this does have a click with a count in. I rarely use it, especially if I already know the hi-hat part I want. I'll just program it manually because then it functions as its own click. So I'm just clicking in notes here. Now, I am going to leave this pattern as just 16 steps. In order to change the length of a pattern, you hit shift and then you can hit this little arrow here and I can change my step length. Right now, I am deliberately electing not to do that, even though I know eventually I will want this to be a 2-bar long pattern instead of a 1-bar pattern. You're going to see why in a second, but first, let me just record. I quantize it. Very good. And now, I want to mess with these hi-hats a little bit in a few different ways. First of all, I want to have some velocity changes. So I'm going to hit shift and then the drum that I want to mess with. And the nice thing is that changing this here kind of latches it to this value. So when I select another step and jiggle the knob a little bit, it defaults back to what it was previously on the previous step that you worked on. So I want these to all be around the same velocity, so I can kind of do this strategically in a batch. Then I can do this one. Let's go up a bit to like 70-ish. 70-ish, 70-ish, 70-ish. Maybe this can be a little bit more. That's pretty easy to do, but I didn't want to do it for 2 bars. But now that I've done that, now I can double the length of this pattern. That way, I only had to do that velocity adjustment for 1 bar instead of for 2 bars. To double the length of a pattern and like duplicate itself, hold down sequence and hit this forward button. It says duplicate. Now my pattern is 2 bars long, with all of these steps replicated on that second bar. So go back to note. I keep wanting to hit exit. It's like the one thing I need to unlearn on this. And now I'm going to make the little variations that I want to make. So for this second bar, I don't want this kick here, and I do want this snare here. Cool. And now I'm going to mess with these sounds a bit, shape them. To do that, hit Shift, hit Sound. Make sure that pad is selected. I'm going to just turn this level down. Now here's the next thing that's really important to know for working on this thing efficiently and in a way that feels a little more painless. Holding down Shift and turning the value knob will make the value jump by a greater amount than just 1. So if I turn this level down, that's fine. But if I hold down Shift, it jumps by 10s. So I could turn this way down very quickly. And this is just an example. Like, this doesn't really gain you much holding down Shift in this case, but it's just an example of the fact that holding down Shift when turning the value knob often will jump you by a consistent amount. I'll turn this down. I think this is still too loud. That works. Now, I actually want to click back into that. I want to go ahead and edit the attack a little bit. I didn't do this in the speedrun version because I was just trying to get the idea to exist. Now I'm going to leave this active, select the next pad that I want to edit the attack of, and that once again, made things just a little bit easier. So now we have our basic drums. Oh, I also do want to go back into editing this pattern. Once again, Shift, then the arrow. I want to turn my shuffle up just a tiny bit. So, a few things. To set your scale, hit Shift and then Note, and you've got all these settings for the way that your pads behave, including your scale. So I'm going to change this to a minor scale, exit out of that. And when you're in chromatic, you can just hit these octave down and octave up buttons because they don't have notes occupying them. When you're in a scale like this, you hold down Note and then hit that button. And that will shift you up and down octaves still. But let's go ahead and select my preset. And we are just going to do this like the relatively slow way. But I'm going to show you some faster ways to pull up sounds a bit later. I've got my little electric piano. Now, here's the next workflow thing, and this is one of the things that made me want to make this video. For editing the length of a pattern before you record, because oftentimes on groove boxes, it can feel like there are too many steps from having an idea to getting that idea into some listenable form. And so anything you can do to make that quicker is nice. And one bit of workflow that's very encoded into my muscle memory is what I'm about to show you. So by default, each track has one clip active, just one blank clip that is 1 bar long. I want to change this to be 4 bars long in this case. And to do that, I'm going to hold down Shift and hit this arrow button again. I'm going to scroll to my step length. Now, here's where holding down Shift and turning the value knob comes in again. If I click into here and do that, this jumps by 8s. So 16 steps is 1 bar, 32 steps is 2 bars, 3 bars, 4 bars, all the way up to 8 bars. In this case, it jumps by 8s, which is super freaking nice. So the motion is really hard coded into my muscle memory. So the second I pull up a preset that I like and have an idea that I like, I immediately just boom, boom, I'm ready to record. So let's do that. Now, I messed that up, not on purpose, but it is a good time to mention, to delete a note in the step sequencer, you could click on the note and go back to the note and deactivate it. That's the slow way, and I am not interested in doing it that way. To just delete an entire step on a melodic track, hold down Shift and Project, and then select it, and that just clears the step right off the bat. Okay, so that went fine, but let's say that I just hit one of these notes in the wrong spot and I just want to nudge a step forward or backwards. You can do that by copying and pasting a step. So let me show you that real quick. So let me just take this first note, just because it'll be nice and obvious for you to hear the result. There is a pretty specific order that you have to do these steps in. So first, select the step that you want to copy. Hold down Shift and select Effects to get to this copy secondary command. Select the destination that you want to copy it to, and then press Shift Effects again to paste it. And now that lives here. Once again, select the note you want, Shift and then Effects to copy, select the destination, Shift and Effects to paste. It does have to be in that order for it to work. Regardless, at this point, I should save. So I'm gonna hit Shift and then Tempo to get to this right secondary command. That's the quick way to get to it. And then I'm just gonna name this something dumb. And now we can keep moving. So once again, I'm gonna queue up this next track, select it to be a tone track, immediately do the little shift kind of continuous motion to get myself a 4-bar pattern. And I did mention that I would make that bass preset sound a little bit less out of place. Hold down note. Let's record that real quick. So, one of the bummers originally about the MC-101 is that you're kind of stuck with the presets unless you loaded stuff in that had been made elsewhere. That's no longer the case because now we have pretty much unfettered access to the sound engine. To get to that, Shift and then Sound, and then go to Partial, which is the partial tone editor because of the partial tones, I believe. And so I want to get rid of that LFO movement, or at least drastically scale it back. So I'm going to go to my filter, change that depth to something very little, then maybe go and turn down my filter cutoff of it. Maybe turn up the release just a tiny bit. And now, it's a little more basic, sure, but I think it fits in the mix a lot better. So the pipeline from preset to sound that really works for what you were looking for can be fairly quick, especially if it's a more basic sound like this one. But let's keep moving. I'll make this a tone track. Now, stop. I want this track to be kind of my dumping ground for a bunch of stuff. Not just for the pad that I made in the speedrun version of this, but for maybe multiple layers of pads, maybe other parts that I can layer in post. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is hold down Shift, select the track itself, and change the sound source to clip. What this means is that each one of these clips on track 4 can have a different preset, which is super nice. So now that I've got that kind of set up, now I can go ahead and select that pad preset that we used earlier. And in this case, I do like to record stuff piecemeal. Because I can't always get to that second chord quickly enough. I'm going to quickly just double check that I only have the notes that I want on that first step. I do, so I'll just mash exit to get out of that. Now, here's the fun part for layering. I'm gonna go to my clips, and I'm gonna copy this clip to the next one over. So Shift and then Effects to copy. I'm gonna copy everything in the clip because why not? Now, you can scroll through them like this, or I could just select them using the pads, which is maybe a bit easier. Cool. So now the second clip also has that pad, and now I can swap this pad out for a different one. No problem. But we're not just stuck with the presets on the device, because we can use the randomizer, especially in conjunction with the custom sound editing, to quickly try stuff that is outside of what the presets offer. So I'm going to go for, say, an analog pad. Let's turn these down. That's not bad. We can probably work with that. So like, we can go ahead and edit this a bit. Now go to partial. I want to, let's say, turn down the filter, turn up the filter envelope. Maybe turn up the release a little bit. With both filters, actually. And I'm thinking at this point, maybe that would sound better down an octave. We could do that too. I can either edit my clip from the shift clip here, or like we've been doing, I can do it from this shift arrow. And in this case, I want to go to transpose. It's clashing a bit with my bass, but could be a decent layer theoretically. I could also start a new clip with just something totally different on it, or you can also copy clips between tracks. So this electric piano part, I want to copy it to track 4 so I can layer something else with that electric piano. Once again, it's the same process, just copy everything in the clip. And then when you're choosing its destination, go to the, in this case, track 4. And it even brings along with it that patch, so we can just swap it out. Let's do another random one, because that's fun. It sounds kind of derpy in this context, but hopefully you get where I'm going with this. So for layering purposes, on track 4, I usually like to just fill this up with a bunch of different options, like a bunch of different pad layers, stuff that layers with like duplicate versions of other tracks, maybe a longer, more held down bass line rather than this kind of little staccato one, so the two could complement each other. I'll fill these up and then I'll layer them in post by recording all of this into my computer over USB, which I've shown many times on this channel. I'll link a couple videos at the end of this one showing that process. But the process of finding new sounds, adding new layers can get very quick once you kind of get into the groove of using the random patches to their fullest extent to modify them kind of on the fly. Like if you hear something in a random patch, you can immediately get an idea down and then modify that patch to suit exactly how you want it to sound. That process can get pretty quick. There is one other way to more efficiently work with patches, especially self-made or self-modified patches, and that is to pull patches from projects. And to potentially make that process easier for yourself, here's what you can do. So I'm going to start a new clip for this, and I'm going to go, instead of preset, I'm going to go project. And in this case, I'm just going to scroll way over to a project I know has a bunch of sounds that I like in it. And I can go harvest it. I think these init tones are all self-made. Yeah. So what you could do to make this even more efficient, and full confession, I didn't take my own advice and didn't set this up, but what you could do to make this even more efficient is put an underscore at the beginning of your project name. That way it's the first one in the list. So when you go to load in a preset from a project, that underscore one would be the first one there. And you'll notice when I hopped back into this, it just went back to the last project I was working with. So that's just one more idea for increased efficiency on this thing that I wanted to put in your brain. If you'd like some more MC-101, I've got you covered with these videos over here, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching.